Welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast. My name is Anthony Oliver, and today we have a special episode recorded live in front of delegates at the recent Transforming Infrastructure Performance Summit in New York, the latest in this series of global events supported by software giant Bentley Systems and the UK government. My guest is Andy Byford, Special Advisor at Amtrak, former London Transport Commissioner and the man in charge of the massive multi-billion-dollar transformation of New York's vast Penn Station, the busiest rail hub in the Western Hemisphere. The station sits on 7th Avenue in the heart of Manhattan alongside Maddison Square Garden's sports and concert venue. It serves hundreds of thousands of passengers each day via numerous MTA subway lines and the Long Island Railroad. Yet for decades it has struggled under the weight of aging assets, fragmented governance and chronic underinvestment. The result has been a station that works hard but not well enough for the city, the region or the nation it serves. But that is now beginning to change. Under the expert eye of Andy, aka the Train Daddy, the Penn Station transformation intends to redefine what a modern, customer-focused, high-capacity rail hub can look like in one of the world's densest urban environments. And after a career running London's transport network and before that transportation in Sydney, Toronto and New York, he is certainly the man that knows what passengers and crucially what politicians want from this kind of station transformation. So let's find out more. I kicked off by getting to grips with this vast and highly political project and asked what world class actually looks like. Andy, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast. We're going to explain, I suppose, how the lessons learnt in your experience can shape the future. But I outlined the challenge. Set the scene for us. Because in your words, the phrase world class comes up quite a lot. Mm-hmm. What does it mean in practical terms, as far as you're concerned, for Penn Station? What does it mean for passengers 5 and 10 years from now? What are you trying to achieve, Andy?
Sure. Well, what I normally do whenever I start any of these discussions is have a show of hands about who here went to or remembers the old Penn Station, which I appreciate is not much good on a podcast, but typically when I ask that, because it's some time ago now, the old station was demolished in the mid-60s, you don't tend to get very many in terms of a show of hands. But it was a spectacularly beautiful station. It was what you expect arriving in New York to be like, right? That it was grandiose, it had this fantastic sort of soaring atrium. It really was exactly what you think, wow, arriving in New York, the greatest city in the world, and here's a station to go with it. But in their wisdom, back in the 60s, the station was demolished. Maddison Square Garden was built on top. So you ended up with this sort of subterranean labyrinth of corridors and low ceilings and very cramped conditions. And the station was actually designed for 200,000 people, and yet 600,000 people now use it a day. So I'd say straight up, I actually think the people who run Penn Station, from our sister railroads on NJT and LIRR, and my colleagues at Amtrak, I think their miracle work is actually in keeping the place going. But it's completely suboptimal. It's not acceptable. It's nowhere near good enough for New York, for New Jersey, for the US. The place is kind of falling apart. It is safe, but the operational equipment behind the scenes is on its last legs. So what we're aiming to do is a top to bottom transformation of all aspects of the station, not just the bricks and mortar, but the customer service, the retail offer, the signage, the operations. We want to make it exponentially better such that one day people will say, this is America's world-class station.
So take us through the numbers then. What's the cost? What's the milestones? But what's the probability of achieving any of that?
Well, we shall see, won't we? But I can't be too specific on the cost, because what we're doing, this has been talked about for decades, as you alluded to. Literally decades have passed where people have sort of gnashed their teeth and wrung their hands and said, it's terrible. Why can't we do something about Penn Station? But for myriad reasons, some of them governance, some of them the cost, some of them the fact that it ain't going to be easy to rebuild a station while it's still operational. This isn't a greenfield site. For whatever reason, it hasn't happened. Now, having said that, there have been incremental improvements. Credit to the MTA for 33rd Street corridor. We've got the beautiful new Moynihan across the road. But for multiple reasons, it hasn't happened. So this time, we're changing the dynamic. The Fed's put Amtrak in charge. We're running a master developer P3 competition. And so I don't know the cost yet. I've got 3 bidders. watch this space. We'll know soon enough which one we recommend, how long it will take, and how much it will cost.
Well, let's get stuck into that in a minute. But project control, as you say, switched from the state, from MTA to the federal government and Amtrak. What is the impact? I suppose the question is why? Why has that happened? And how is it going to make the project more deliverable?
Well, I think best people to ask why it happened is the Feds. The Feds specifically reached out to Amtrak in April, May of 2025 and said, look, this is taking too long. The MTA had courage of what was called Penn reconstruction. Amtrak was looking at Penn expansion, which came with a lot of controversy around demolishing a block of New York. So the Feds said, let's time out, enough of this. We want a shovel in the ground by the end of 27. In order to do that, we want a P3 master developer-led competition. There needs to be one controlling mind. That will be Amtrak. So the two projects were combined into what I'm calling Penn transformation. Let's say what it is. It's not reconstruction. That sounds under-ambitious. It's wholesale transformation.
So you're currently in the final stages of selecting this private partner for the station development. I mean, what is the mix then of private and public funding for the Penn Station? I mean, can you give us a percentage of what's going?
Well, I mean, and earlier on you said how much is it going to cost. I can't say how much it will cost until we've got the RFPs.
Keep trying again, though. How much?
So what I will say, because it is in the public domain, we're saying roughly. It depends what it is, but roughly $7 billion.
Right. I knew we'd get there.
If you want, you could, for say $1 billion, $2 billion, you could make it better. But we're not just talking about tarting it up a bit. We're talking about a transformation. Let me finish.
Yeah.
So, God, he doesn't give you a chance. So, $7 billion there or thereabouts is what we're talking about. But if the project that we choose, because we've been silent on this, involves moving Maddison Square Garden and building a new arena, you can talk about north of that. So where's that money coming from? That capital stack, it's naive to think that would come from wholly private sector funds or sources or public sector sources. It's going to be a mixture of both.
Right, because if you did come up with the conclusion that moving Maddison Square Gardens was a sensible solution, I mean, that would come with a massive extra price tag, but it'd also give you bigger opportunities.
It would. So it's ups and downs. So the time frame on this, then we're getting to the business end of this competition. We launched it effectively last August with the secretary coming up to Penn to say, get ready, industry, we're about to launch competition. We did letters of interest in December. We whittled it down from 4 potential bidders to 3. We then launched the competition in January. So we are expecting bids in at the end of this month.
Yeah.
There will then be a very focused, incredibly intensive, but properly executed evaluation period. I'll be on the panel, and we will evaluate against a series of criteria which of the 3 bids does 3 things. 1, best meets the aspirations of the administration, who will be putting a lot of money into this, and also best meets the needs of New Yorkers, New Jerseyans, and other users of the station. 2, that suitably expands the station, but that is credible and deliverable in terms of the project. We don't want any whimsical flights of fancy. We want a proper, feasible scheme. And 3, that is best able to convince us that they can implement on a brownfield working station.
Because I imagine that you have to balance visible, I suppose, near-term improvements for passengers with this deeper, longer-term system that maybe unlocks those kind of longer-term values.
Sure.
All before 2027, when you've got to crack on with it.
Sure. So basically, so we do that evaluation. I'm then booked to go. It's already sorted out, booked to go before the Amtrak board in May of 26 this year, such that we would then hopefully get the green light to sign up a contract with the chosen master developer, one of the 3, to then have a 1.5 PDA phase, project development agreement phase, to advance the design, to build the capital stack, to then get that shovel in the ground at the end of 27. And we're not just just talking, though, about this station, just making the station better. We want at the same time to rework the track level and to rethink about the future the service offer of the tri-state to see how can the station be more efficient and how can we gain the benefit of through running, in other words, trains that don't just terminate and stable or go back from whence they came, but push on through the station to provide many more travel options with the economic benefits that have been proven across the world to exist.
So it's a federal project, but you've also got a new mayor, Azura Madami. Came into office in January. How do you navigate the politics of this? And what for you are the kind of the North Star, I suppose, of navigating the politics for you?
Well, sure. I mean, I remember when this job came up, when Amtrak were given the job, I stuck my hand up. I phoned my chairman. I said, I want that job, knowing though that this would not be an easy gig, because in many ways doing the construction is a piece of cake compared to navigating the politics. Because whilst everyone, I haven't met a single person yet who says leave it alone. I love 60s kitsch. I haven't met anyone who says that. Whilst everyone agrees that the station's a dump and needs to be sorted out and could be exponentially better, corralling disparate views, of which there are many, across myriad stakeholders is the challenge. Yeah. So we're dealing with two states, the feds, the FRA, the FTA, New Jersey Transit, the MTA, multiple local elected officials, neighborhood groups, advocacy groups, the media, not yet the mafia, Veronica, but you never know. You never know, right? It's New York City.
So how does that compare? I mean, I mentioned you worked in London, you worked in Toronto, you worked in Sydney. How does that compare to those other cities?
I think the stakeholder environment is more complex precisely because you've got the existence of the states. I mean, you sort of do in Australia they do have states, and Toronto you've got provinces, but it's much more felt here. The states carry much more power. It's difficult to gain a consensus. And I just think that the size and scale of Penn and the size and scale of the challenge is that much bigger. But having said all of that, that's the beauty of having had a global career. You learn your lessons as you go through. My previous gig here in New York really equipped me with learning the pitfalls of New York politics.
Well, maybe we'll get into that. But let's talk a bit about your career. So you joined the project last May. A career started in London Underground. And you went to Toronto Transit Commission, Sydney's Rail Corp. Then you spent some time at New York City Metropolitan Transport Authority. But most recently you were then Commissioner for Transport for London.
Correct.
In London. You oversaw a huge programme there and notably delivered Crossrail of the Elizabeth line. And as a Londoner, thank you very much.
Sure. Well, it's obviously a team effort there, but that in itself taught me lessons, because I joined when they were 2.5 years out. And at the time, the project team, who were fantastic, but were saying, right, we're good, the stations are basically ready, it's all about systems integration. The stations were way off ready, and so we brought in additional consultant support to help us drive that thing to the finish line, such that every day at 8 o'clock in the morning, I had a check-in call every day for 2.5 years with the project team to make sure that we were on time and on track. One thing, so I know how big projects can go wrong and the importance of the glide path of systems integration through trial operation, testing, commissioning, and to getting the thing right on the day. But the one benefit that London really has, and as Commissioner from which I benefited, was unlike New York, the TfL is the world's largest integrated transit authority. Right. So I had jurisdiction over everything, which on the one hand gave you a lot of power, but on the other hand was massive single point accountability. But I actually think that's a good thing, because even here in New York, sometimes you get, the MTA or Transit, as well as President of Transit, might say, well, that's really a DOT thing. Well, funny enough, the DOT is saying it's a transit thing. In London, it's the Commissioner of Transport for London.
And it is an amazing system, I have to say, that the fact that it is all so integrated in London. Is there one lesson or one hard project delivery lesson that you think you can bring from London that you're determined not to repeat at Penn?
Well, I think the golden lesson, which is where I thought you were going to go, but let me say that first, is to get your scope right from the start. Lock down your scope and lock down your budget, and as best you can, stop, love them though I do, elected officials saying, oh, can we just have this and can we just have that? No, you can't, unless you're going to increase my budget. Yeah. So I think that the main thing, though, is don't underestimate the complexity. In many ways, the construction is fairly straightforward, but don't underestimate the complexity of integrating the systems in order that you can open flawlessly, which is always your objective, on time and on budget, but flawless.
So if a politician was to come along at the end of this year and say, do you know what, I really do want you to knock down Maddison Square Garden, you've got to say, no, sorry, it's locked down.
Well, I mean, ultimately it is playing that balancing act, right, or that game, because they decide, we advise, they decide. That's the lot of a public servant. Mm-hmm. So ultimately, if elected officials ask you to change direction, okay, they can ask that. I would go back to my board for a refreshed mandate, were that the case.
Right. You started your career as a graduate trainee at London Underground in 1989, mm-hmm. and you've worked in many customer-facing roles mm-hmm. Along the way in the UK and around the world. What does that interface with the public, the customer? Mm-hmm. And they are paying the bills, they are providing the fare revenue. What does it teach you about programme delivery?
The importance of remembering for whom you are doing this. You're not just doing it because it's an interesting exercise. You are doing these jobs because ultimately you are delivering a customer benefit. So therefore, in the scope that you initially put together, remember that point, because you're not just building it for some sort of interesting academic exercise. So make sure you've understood customer needs, customer inputs. Keep the customer informed throughout the process. So, a great believer in transparency. We've got all sorts of ideas for how we might involve New Yorkers in the emerging design. But B, then also once the thing is open, make sure that the service, you don't all relax on opening day. The service then is consistently excellent from then on in.
Yeah. Another, talking about the paying customer, like London Underground, you had to modernise while the service is in operation. At Penn Station, you've got people who are going to be walking in and around the station. It's kind of, someone once, the classic analogy is open heart surgery mm-hmm. on a marathon runner while they're running the marathon. I mean, what lessons do you take from those experiences in London and in Toronto, where you did a similar thing?
We did with the Spadina subway extension. Well, look, it's not easy, and one of the evaluation criteria, I mentioned it earlier, that we will apply is not just the credibility and the feasibility and the constructability of the design, but what's the implementation plan? Because no one will thank us, and I won't last very long, if during the construction it's a complete shambles. Right. You've got to keep people safe, and you've got to keep the station running. So we will be looking at how to get that balance right. I mean, equally, I've got to make sure that people do understand, and I'll be out on the streets and in the station saying, there's no sugarcoating this. There won't be any gain without a little pain. There will be disruption. It's inevitable that that there will be some, but it's how you go about it. So I really want to spend a lot of time with my team. I've got my colleague Julio from AECOM, our PMCM here, and some other team members. We need to really work with the master developer to look at the phasing, the signage, how you keep people safe through what will be a long and difficult but ultimately beautiful process.
And where would you say that the real capacity constraints are that you need to tackle? Is it in the tunnels, the approaches, the operating model? Where do you focus first on this transformation?
It's a bit of everything. I mean, those of you who know Penn Station will know there's lots of very narrow corridors. The platforms themselves are unusually narrow for a mainline station, and it's not easy to fix that because you've got nearly 1,000 columns. Everyone assumes it's holding up MSG. Some of them are, but a lot of them are holding up Penn Station or Penn 2, the office tower, and the subway at either end. So you can't just willy-nilly remove columns. You'd have to underpin them. But so that's a constraint. There's nowhere near enough VCE, vertical circulation elements, elevators, escalators. All of that needs to be addressed. The track layout is it works after a fashion. Like I said, I think they're miracle workers, but we think there's ways that you can reconfigure that whole track level, and I want that track level to be as pleasant as the the upper levels, to make the station more efficient and to enable through running in the future as a different service option.
And I imagine also more consistent in terms of the way the public sees
the
it.
Signage and everything needs to be sorted out, the look and feel of the station, the retail and commercial offer. One thing I'm determined that we won't do, because so many projects fail to do this, is so often you get beautiful new customer-facing facilities, which of course is right, they're the customers, right, they pay your wages, and you forget about the staff. The staff at Penn Station at the moment, again, my miracle workers on all three railroads, they work in these horrible little veal crate windowless rooms with awful antiquated equipment, so we want to give them new lunch rooms, proper state-of-the-art control facilities. You know, let's make this, every aspect of this, I want to be excellent, consistently excellent.
And I imagine also not have those cupboards so they don't know what's inside and they don't dare touch it just in case it all falls apart.
Well, there's also a lot of back-of-house equipment in the main station that could easily and should easily and will easily, or not easily, but will be removed elsewhere to free up accommodation space and passenger-facing space.
We've got about 10 more minutes, so I'm keen to get to, I've got loads of questions, but are there questions that people from the floor want to put to Andy? Where are we going? Behind you, Lindsay?
Lindsay O'Leary, American Society of Civil Engineers. Okay, we're at this wonderful day of thinking about transportation, so I'm going to throw in a topic we haven't talked about yet. In Texas, they're partnering with the FAA to test electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles, eVTOLs, right? So they're coming. These things are coming. Air taxis, the Jetsons is real life sooner than we know it. So is this Penn Station reconfiguration, huge transformation, are we going to connect to the future of air traffic travel?
Well, that's a very good question. And funny enough, I know a bit about that because I went to an event the other day where they had this absolutely amazing British vertical takeoff and landing plane that is apparently in testing and is going to become reality. I think that world-class transit stations, world-class rail stations, in addition to everything you expect that they should have seamless integration with other modes. You shouldn't see them necessarily as competitors. And when I was on my previous gig at Amtrak, which was to do with high-speed rail, people said, oh, but the airlines won't like that. Well, if you do it properly, look at Deutsche Bahn. They link up with Lufthansa. Look at Air France. They link up with SNCF. So for me, it's a bit of a British expression, horses for courses. Over a certain distance, you want to take a high-speed rail train. There may well be opportunities for these flying taxis, etc., but they're never going to take the place of the capacity that a truly excellent rail service can take. So you need a bit of both, but you need the interchange and the interface to be excellent.
Well, there's a very large roof on the top of the MTG. You can land them all on top.
Well, I'll have to have a word with Jim Dolan about that.
It's a question of Georgie.
Thanks so much, Georgie Skipper from Lucetia Group. I've had the fortune of catching the Amtrak for the last 2 years between Boston and New York, and now the next gen is excellent. I've also been catching the Eurostar recently a lot, and I don't know, you'll be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that with the Eurostar, they ended up putting about $1 billion in to make it 15 minutes faster. It kind of reminded me a little bit of what's happening with the Amtrak. I'm curious about the interface between the business case of when you decide to upgrade and how that even relates to the facilities of where those actual assets actually land, and you sort of where the assets kind of hub into and how that kind of works. And when you consider that $1 billion would, in the Eurostar, would probably also equate to serving bottles of Bollinger for passengers for 10 years, you know, you've got a trade-off about like where you spend your money and what's the actual kind of opportunity and what's the opportunity cost. And I'm interested about how you're considering that, considering the Amtrak, the next gen, and how that's being
sure.
lifted.
So, no, great question, George. I mean, funny you should use the words opportunity cost. I was just going to say that because people always focus on the dollar amount of how much it costs to do it, and what quite often they fail to do is what about the cost of not doing it. And at the moment, so let's talk about Penn. We're not looking at Penn in isolation, by the way. It needs to be seen in conjunction with the complementary complementary projects, which are the Sawtooth Bridge, the Susquehanna Bridge, the newer cellars, upgrading the catenary, straightening tracks where we can, bypassing the Baltimore Pennsylvania tunnel down in Baltimore.
So that gives you that quality service coming in. Yeah.
So that the Northeast Corridor doesn't literally one day just grind to a halt, because if it does, or if it gets severed because a critical piece of infrastructure has failed, the cost to the US economy by the hour will dwarf whatever it is we spend on these constituent projects. So I think it's money well spent. Now, clearly you still have to make the case, but I think the case just at face value is compelling.
Yeah. Well, is there one more question, and then just far away here.
Thanks, Andy, for a really terrific presentation. Anthony was pushing you a little bit on the cost here, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit about opportunities for value capture that this might create. I'm thinking maybe two silos on that. One would be the concessions, so the leveraging against the food, concessions on the clothing, et cetera, that I've been through Penn Station many times. So I know improving that layout should improve the value in that. Perhaps parking, but is there any opportunity for value capture from increases in real estate values or something else that I think an excellent Penn Station will generate, maybe close by? I'm not sure how you've thought about that,
Sure,
but
yes.
are there any innovations?
We have. So in this P3 Master Developer-led competition, we have said to the bidders, you obviously set certain parameters, although you don't want to be too specific. I mean, here's a good example. We were silent on whether the garden stays put or moves, because A, that's not our decision, and B, we didn't want to artificially stifle the competition, because I'm expecting maybe a bid to be predicated on the garden staying and maybe another one predicated on it moving. But we set out what the base scope was, which is sort out Penn Station and the adjacent, what's called the service building, which is the last piece of McKeed, Mead and White infrastructure. It's on 31st Street. We think something could be used of that. However, we also said, mindful that it's a P3, and I have to remind people on occasions that it's 3 Ps, right? One of those Ps is not philanthropy. They don't do it for free. I once had a conversation with a politician about that, who said to me, no, Andy, the private sector pays, yes, but they expect to be repaid. So this stack will be public sector money, some private sector money. Then there'll be a gap where we say to the private sector, you will have opportunities to maybe run the commercial, to run the retail. And you can, as part of your bid, you can say, here's some ideas we've got for maybe adjacent office towers or commercial in the surrounding area, because we also want to see improvements to the public realm in the immediate vicinity. But that does come with controversy, and so we're very careful to say that we will invite people's ideas for how they might make their money back. We're not bound by it. That will again be part of the evaluation.
Because the politics of it are, as you said earlier, are very real, and fragmented governance has held back this project in the past. I mean, it holds back any project, to be quite honest. But what is genuinely different this time? Is it this getting a firm grip about what the PPP actually means? Is that what makes a difference?
I think it's a number of things. I think it's the fact that it was a little fuzzy. There was one entity's doing one bit of it, one entity's doing the other bit of it. There was no real federal push. So the project meandered along. Improvements were made, there's no question. 33rd Street, some of the entrances were sorted out. But it wasn't going quick enough. Here are the big game changers. Number one, the federal government is deadly serious about getting this done. My reporting is to the Amtrak board and to the administration. So as long as we got that push, I think that's a real game changer. The second game changer is by using the expertise, the imagination and ingenuity of the private sector, and the quicker access to capital. I think we can make it a reality this time.
Because you painted a very vivid picture of an incredibly complicated governance structure. What is the Byford way then of bringing these people together?
I apply British charm.
And what is that, Andy?
you try to find areas of consensus. And the good news is, as I said earlier, the good news is everyone starting from the same position that the existing station is suboptimal. I'm going to say particularly for New Jersey, because Amtrak customers have got Moynihan, Long Island have got the 33rd Street Concourse, the Jersey passengers have what's known as the pit, and that is not meant to be a compliment. It's awful. So it's about trying to gain consensus, trying to say to everyone, okay, we all agree that this needs to be done. What are your specific requests? We'll try to accommodate them. What are your, what do you want to see out of this new station? How are we all going to work together? If we can just at least start from, we want this done, that's a very good place to be. But I don't sugarcoat it. I don't underestimate it, dealing with the different entities, and particularly with the politics of the day is not going to be easy, but that's my job. With my team, I've got a fantastic team. It won't just be me, but we're bending over backwards to try to get the politicians, the sister agencies and others on side.
Right. We talked a lot today about the use of data and digital engineering and modern construction methods. I mean, that's at the heart of what you're doing as well, is it? Is that also key to making this project happen?
Yeah, sure. I think we will have failed if we just, deliver a station that just looks nice. So we have the golden opportunity to do a number of other things. It goes without saying, this station will be fully compliant with ADA. In fact, I want it to go beyond ADA. I want this station to be an exemplar of what a truly accessible station should be for all types of disability. Plus, we should definitely be future-proofing it, such a bit like Crossrail, the work we did on Crossrail, that there's true understanding of what the assets are, how much they cost, what they do, what the ongoing capital cost will be, and to embed diagnostics such as the station's a smart station. It tells you how it's performing.
Yeah, and I mean, the lessons that came out of Crossrail, of course, were that there was a huge amount of work done on actually gathering data, and not quite so much work perhaps on making sure that the operator was ready to accept that data. Is that something which you've got top of your mind?
Yeah,
making
sure.
Sure that the owner-operator can actually
100%. 100% that the operator can accept that, understands the assets that they're being given, and isn't overwhelmed by the assets that they're given, which is a point I made in this morning's round table. That yes, someone somewhere, probably an engineer behind the scenes or a maintenance person, needs to know an alarm about something that may be about to going to fail in 3 weeks' time. Don't overload the minute-by-minute operators, because it just becomes untenable.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that is clear about the Penn Station transformation, of course, it's about New York. It's about transforming an asset in New York, but it's also, as you said earlier, about the wider New York region. Is that's a clear priority for you? How do you make sure that you don't forget that?
It is, and so I very much appreciate the fact that the federal government have entrusted Amtrak with this huge and onerous but very exciting opportunity. In doing so, they gave us two real mandates. One, get this competition underway and have a shovel in the ground by the end of 27, which we will. And number two, work with the FRA to look at the underlying service pattern for the tri-state, which hasn't really been looked at for decades. Is there, if we were to reconfigure the station at track level, is there a latent demand for many more through-run routes, such as, I don't know, Newark to, or to say Trenton to Ronkonkoma, Trenton to New Rochelle? Let's have a look at what the economic benefits might be of that, the economic case, the passenger demand. Let's look at all aspects of how to make the existing footprint work better before we even countenance expansion. Now, obviously, also in the job, I've got to be mindful of the complementary activity or the contemporary activity, such as Gateway, such as the other work that Amtrak's doing. All this needs to dovetail together. So it's a very complicated jigsaw, but we've got to get this right.
I've got a couple more really good questions, Andy, but if there's a question here, there's a couple more questions from the audience first. Microphone. Is there one at the back as well somewhere? Put the hand up and get a mic. Fire away.
Yeah. Hi, Andy.
Hi.
Great momentum. Good luck. It sounds like you're gonna be comparing apples and oranges with a lot of confidential, probably data from the PPP consortia. So how transparent to New Yorkers and New Jerseyans will the outcome then be at the end of the day once the announcements are made?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's a very insightful question. I mean, it has been controversial. I've had to resist a bit of a clamour for why can't you make the RFP public? And I think I've just about got people over, because the legal and procurement advice, something somewhat against my gut feel. Those of you who knew me as transit president, I like to be out and about. I like to be transparent. But the advice was, you will put the integrity of the process at risk if you have this sort of live, by the minute procurement process. So we're not going to do that. But when we do get the Amtrak board decision, hopefully in 6 weeks' time, it is my intention that we'll be able to be much more explicit with everyone. We'll say, here's the winning bid, here's the nature of it, this is the kind of thing you're going to get, which will be developed over the next few year and a half, and you'll have input into that. But also at summary level, and here are this is the nature of the other opportunities that just fell short. We won't go into scoring, but we will be very upfront about and transparent about why we made the decision we made. We owe it to New Yorkers to do that.
Is there one more question for the floor before we move? Is there? No? Yes? No? Okay, well, in which case, Andy, if Penn Station, if the transformation succeed, how do you think it will change everyday life for New Yorkers in a tangible way? And I'm thinking, do you think that it will make New Yorkers love the public transport system, perhaps in the same way that maybe Londoners do?
Yeah, I mean, I'll let New Yorkers be the judge. They're the ultimate users, and New Jerseyans and other users. I'd like to think we come up with something that at the end of it, people say, you know what, that was worth the disruption. This truly is now. We can't recreate the past, but we've got a sort of modern day iteration of something that makes us proud as New Yorkers, proud as Americans. That's easy, intuitive, and a pleasure to use. As I said, and that every single touch point is consistently excellent. That's how you get to America's world-class station.
And in 20 years' time, when you look back on it, what would you say needs to be in there for you to call this a really successful project?
A fantastic bar. No, I mean, I happen to think, I'm being facetious, I think a world-class station does have a world-class bar, but the Eurostar's a good example at Waterloo. No, it's got to be something that stands the test of time, that's efficient and easy for the operators to use. At the moment there's 3 separate cleaning contracts. That's insane. There should be one. We want it to be easy, intuitive, safe, pleasant, clean. Those of you who've been to Japan, if you go to somewhere like Kyoto or Tokyo Central, that's what I'm talking about. Something that really is excellent, that lasts the test of time. Yeah. That's not outdated in 10 years' time, but really is something where people can hold their heads high. And I want my team, my construction team, and the master developers to think, wherever they are in their career, I had a piece of that, and I'm proud of it.
Well, Andy, it is a phenomenal achievement. I wish you incredible success with it, and I will be keeping an eye on it. I'm sure that there'll be quite a few people in this room who will be keeping an eye on what you're up to, and many more beyond this room who will keep an eye on what you're up to. Amazing project. Certainly another in a long line of fantastic legacy projects that you're driving in your unique British charming way. So look, thanks so much for sharing your thoughts today at this Tip Summit, and thank you very much for joining me on the Infrastructure Podcast. Andy, thanks.